hopefully he'll remember
All right,
that.
we're good.
Hello again, everyone. I am Chris Schur, and this is the Citizen Sports Weekly for Wednesday, December 2nd, 2020. Robert Harding and Justin Ritzel are joining me here. We'll do some NFL picks, and we'll talk some other sports topics too. So let's get right to it. We've got 4 games. Our first game is the Indianapolis Colts at the Houston Texans. Houston has been playing a little better lately. Maybe getting rid of Bill O'Brien is finally kicked in. Colts have been playing better too. I just got a gut feeling about this one. I like Houston to cover this. I think the Texans can win the game, but I think they'll definitely cover. It'll be a close one. So I'm going with Houston. Robert?
You know, it obviously took you a while to get us the picks.
Yeah, okay.
So, you know, I wasn't surprised to see your beloved Houston Texans on the list. I don't know what it is with you and this team, but it was part of your trash lineup 3 weeks ago as well. Look, I'm taking the Colts in this one. I think the Colts, you know, are going to want to bounce back after a pretty miserable performance against the Titans. The Titans absolutely owned them last week. You know, this is another divisional game, a favorite of yours, I know, Chris. And so I think the Colts will want to take advantage of this opportunity against a lesser opponent. Yes, the Texans have been playing better, but important to note that they're dealing with some punishments stemming from PED usage, namely Will Fuller, who was their new number 1 receiver after the departure of DeAndre Hopkins. So that's a pretty big loss for them. You know, I think the Texans will make it somewhat competitive, but I'm still taking the Colts in this one.
All right. Justin?
Well, I'm sure O'Brien's family doesn't appreciate that shot that you took at him, Chris. I would just like to point out, you know, for everyone that's saying how terrible the Texans are this year and how they've suddenly come on of late, let's just take a look back at their schedule for the first month and a half. Here's the teams they played: the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Steelers, the Vikings, who they lost to, the Jaguars, who they beat. Then they lost to the Titans and the Packers. And since then, they've won 3 out of 4. Now, that is a really tough schedule. And yes, if they were a good team per se, you'd think that they could have won one or two of those games against the good teams, but they're not this abomination that everyone's making them out to be. Now, that said, as pointed out already, their best receiver will not be playing. He's out because of a PED suspension. They released another one of their receivers this week, Chris's old friend Kenny Stills, who's no longer with the team. They just love making life hard on Deshaun Watson for some reason. I think the Colts will win, but I'll take the Texans to cover too. I think they'll make this a close game. They'll cover the 3.
All right. Our next game, the Cleveland Browns at Tennessee. Titans are 5.5-point favorite. Now, I know the Browns have this track record of, you know, playing really bad in huge games against, you know, big competition competitors, like that game against the Steelers recently. But this is 5.5. I think that's a large number. I think Tennessee wins the game, but I think they win by 3 points. I like Cleveland to cover. Cleveland can run the football. They could have 2 1,000-yard running backs this season. I think that helps keeping Derrick Henry off the field. So I like Cleveland to cover the 5.5 at Tennessee. Go ahead, Justin.
So Baker Mayfield, the number 1 overall pick from a few years ago, he threw 2 touchdowns last week, probably had his most efficient game of the season. The 3 games prior to that, he did not throw a single touchdown. And the most yards he threw in those 3 games was 204 yards. Now, I know there was a couple bad weather games mixed in there, but that is pathetic. And I think the Browns have a really solid roster, and they could be a lot better if they didn't have a bum quarterback. Baker Mayfield is not being talked about enough as another quarterback in the long list of number 1 picks who didn't pan out. He's not at Jamarcus Russell level because who is? But he's been a bad quarterback, and save for one great game this year, he threw 5 touchdowns out of the blue against Cincinnati. He's not doing much. So don't get too excited about life, Browns fans. I know you've had a tough go of it the last 20 years, but your quarterback still stinks, and you're not going anywhere until you have a good quarterback. I'll take Tennessee in this game. They have 2 players who literally every time they get the ball are a threat to score a touchdown. Obviously, Derrick Henry's one, A.J. Brown's the other. So I'll take Tennessee. I don't believe in Cleveland or Baker.
All right, go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, I know that the Browns are in the hunt. Obviously, they have improved this year. Defense is solid. On the offensive side of the ball, you already mentioned, Chris, that they have the two-headed monster, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. So some talent on both sides of the ball for sure. But I'm going to throw some compliments your way, Chris. I don't think they're better than your Dolphins. That's how much I think of the Browns. I think the Titans are a much better team, much better on the offensive side of the ball with Derrick Henry, the best running back in football, and you got some solid receivers there. Tannehill is continuing his play from last year. Just steady. He's not putting up huge numbers, but he's putting up good numbers, and that's really all the Titans need with Derrick Henry, and the defense is playing okay. So, I think they'll build on that win over the Colts. That was a big win for them in the divisional picture and the playoff picture. Quite frankly, they surged to the number 3 spot in the AFC, and I think they'll take care of business against the Browns.
All right, our next game is the Los Angeles Rams at the Arizona Cardinals. The Rams are 3-point favorites. Arizona coming off a disappointing loss at New England. I think that kind of cooked their postseason hopes. The Rams are starting to play better, and I like that to continue. I like the Rams to cover -3 at Arizona. Go ahead, Robert.
What standings are you cooked their playoff hopes? Oh my goodness, man. I don't know about this. Now I have to pull up the standings just to respond to that. I mean, look, this is an NFC West game. The records go out the window when the NFC West get together because as we've seen with so many of these games this year, expect the unexpected. You might think that there's a favorite, but it could easily go another way. We saw this with the Seahawks and Cardinals game earlier this year. That Seahawks should have won that game, but Cardinals somehow pulled it out. Look, I got the standings right here. Cardinals have the 7th and final spot right now. Cook their playoff hopes. If the playoffs started today, they would be in. So I don't know where Cook playoff hopes coming.
But they don't. They don't start today, and they're playing a tough divisional opponent.
But
so
you're saying they're out of it. They're clearly not. They're in the playoffs right now.
I'm just saying the way they've been. Let's put it this way: if it wasn't for the Hail Murray against your Bills a couple weeks ago, they'd be on a 4-game losing streak, I believe.
You might be right.
They're fading right now, not ascending. Yeah.
You're right. I will say, I will give you that they are struggling, but to say that they're out of the playoffs, look, they're competing for, they're only a game back of the Rams right now. And, the Rams have their own struggles after losing to the Niners. And with just looking at this, like the Vikings are behind them at 5-6, a real threat there. The Bears, who I believe started 5-0 or 5-1, are now 5-6. I don't see them competing. And then, you got a whole – I don't think that it's – I don't think they're toast here. I mean, they still have enough talent.
Okay, they might sneak in as the 7th seed. Okay, I'll give you that. But I'm just saying the Rams are going to win, and they're going to cover -3. So go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. I think that, look, the Rams they didn't play well against the Niners last week. The Niners won that game. Now this week there's questions about, Jared Goff, and it sounds almost like, another player that went in that same draft, Carson Wentz, questions about him. And, I think Goff's in a little bit better position, but, the point is that the Rams, are 7-4, and, you wouldn't think that there would be some sort of issue or question about the quarterback for a team in that position. Look, I think the Cardinals bounce back. I think that they got enough here to win. Some of these games that they've lost. It's all about eliminating errors, and this is a key game for them. I think they'll show up and they'll beat the Rams. I think it'll be a close one, but I think they'll win it.
All right, Justin, your thoughts?
Wasn't the Kyler Murray MVP campaign fun? That lasted a whole 5 minutes. That was just great. Yeah, I'm glad we got through that phase, because it was ridiculous then. It's even more ridiculous now. No, the Cardinals are not cooked. That was too strong a word from Chris, but I see where you're coming from, because you're right. You can't take away the Hail Mary. Okay, it happened. They won the game. They get credit for the win in the standings, but they shouldn't have won that game. And then they followed that with 2 straight losses, one of which to a Patriots team they probably should have beat. Kyler Murray, his shoulder's hurt. He's been way less effective since his shoulder got dinged up. I think what you're seeing with the Cardinals is that, this is not, I'm not reinventing the wheel here, but when Kyler Murray can't run and scramble around like he wants to, the Cardinals are not that great of an offense, because he is not a great passer. He's a good passer, but their offense really rolls when he's scrambling around and the defense can't keep up with him. The Rams have a good defense. They have Aaron Donald, who I think can contain Kyler Murray. And then they have a cornerback who can mitigate DeAndre Hopkins a little bit, Jalen Ramsey. So I'm going to lean toward the Rams here. I will say, we've spent all year, or not we, but NFL media, NFL experts have spent all year saying how great the NFC West is. Oh, it's the best division in football, top to bottom. It's great. All these teams have a shot at making the playoffs. All I see is a division where any team can beat any of the other teams in the division on a given week, which tells me none of them are that good. Okay. The only reason all their records are what they are is because they're playing the NFC East teams. Seattle, as great as the Seahawks are, they didn't really look too good against a pretty terrible Eagles team that I'm pretty sure Chris could have performed better than Carson Wentz did the other day. And the Seahawks still, they didn't really put the foot on the pedal and pound them. I'm not really super impressed with any of those teams. I think they're all going to sneak into the playoffs. At least 3 or 4 will sneak into the playoffs. I don't think either of them are going to be NFC championship caliber teams. But I do like the Rams in this matchup just because of the Cardinals kind of falling apart here. And we're not talking about them this week. Maybe I should save this for a minute, but I'm not so sure it'll be the Cardinals grabbing that last wild card spot. More on that later.
Yes, and that's our last game we're going to discuss, and that's Robert's Buffalo Bills, 2.5-point favorites versus San Francisco. The game has been moved from Santa Clara to Arizona because of COVID rules. So the Bills are 2.5-point favorites. San Francisco, I mean, look, we've talked about this. They've had injuries. Jimmy Garoppolo's been hurt. He's been ineffective. George Kittle's been out. I mean, they've had Bosa's out. They've had all kinds of injuries, but they're 5-6 through all this, and they're hanging around. Call me crazy, but I like the Niners to cover the 2.5. It's not a lot. I think they can cover. I think they could win this game. I think the Bills are due for a letdown. They definitely did not, dispatch a bad Chargers team last week. I mean, the Chargers had a chance to win that game, but they didn't have such boneheaded clock management. I like San Francisco to cover, maybe even win against the Bills. Go ahead, Justin.
Sorry, Robert. I also like the 49ers because I think the 49ers are going to sneak in and grab that last wild card spot, which is what I said they would do at the beginning of the year, that they were going to be a wild card team this year. Just pointing that out. I'm not going to jump off that train because they're getting healthier. Richard Sherman's back. They have two good corners. They can still rush the passer, not as good as they did last year, but they have a solid defensive line. And they got some of these offensive weapons that are coming back healthy. Deebo Samuel came back last week. Brandon Ayuk, who's another good receiver, he's coming off the COVID list this week. The 49ers are getting healthy. They're rounding into form here. They had a nice win last week. I don't think it matters if Jimmy G comes back. I think that they can kind of ride it out with whatever quarterback they throw out there, because Kyle Shanahan is that good of a coach. I will say this. I thought they were going to get back to the NFC Championship game this year. While I think they'll get into the playoffs as that last wild card, I just think they're too banged up. They're missing too many. Like Nick Bosa is such a difference maker, and he's not going to come back. They just have too many guys who aren't coming back by the end of the year, and it just kind of limits their potential. But I like them this week. Sorry, Robert.
Yes, Robert.
Well, first, before I get to you, Ritz, listen. Your Dolphins beat the Chargers by 8 points, one possession game, and they were anointed a top 5 team in the league as a result. I don't want to hear this about, the Bills didn't take care of business against the Chargers. That
was Mike Florio who anointed them up that high, okay? I never said they were that good.
I don't care if it was Florio, Whitlock, or any of these other trash national bums. It was still a top 5 ranking. It was hokum then, it's hokum now. I don't want to hear this crap about the Bills didn't take care of business when, the Dolphins, among other teams, beat the Chargers, and no one seems to care about where that team stands in the rankings. Whatever. Look, the Niners, I think, yes, they are getting healthy in some areas. You mentioned Richard Sherman, obviously big to have him back, but I think they're missing too many key pieces. I think Garoppolo is their best choice at quarterback. Mullins is serviceable, but that's only going to last so long as a backup. You're missing George Kittle, who's easily their number 1 receiving threat. I mean, that would definitely cause trouble for the Bills. And if Kittle was in this game, I would have to think longer and harder about my pick. But I don't have to think longer and harder about my pick. The Bills are going to win this game, and that's that. I think that they, I don't know what people expect in the NFL. We were talking about the Packers-Jaguars game in a recent video, and everybody was urinating on the Packers. Oh, they didn't take care of business against the Jaguars. What does that mean? This is the NFL. Teams are going to have better performances against others. And if anybody's following the Chargers this year, they know that this is a team that's a lot better than their record suggests. So, yes, the Bills did some things that I think that they should improve on, but I don't think it, affects how good this team is. I think they will beat San Francisco and avenge that loss at Arizona. Let's avoid the Hail Marys this week and take care of business.
All right. So now we're going to talk about our Week 12 takeaways and what to look for in Week 13. My takeaway from Week 12 is that we had some non-contenders, teams that are really out of it. Playing contenders pretty tough. I mean, Atlanta absolutely blasted the Vegas Raiders. As we discussed, the Chargers definitely gave the Bills a pretty tough game. Jacksonville only lost by 2 or 3 points to Cleveland. Carolina had a big lead on Minnesota, and the Vikings had to come back at the end, right? And then again, San Francisco, which is on the edge of being a contender again, you can call them a contender. They beat the Rams. So it's nice to see some of these teams that are, that could basically be calling it in for the rest of the season, kind of like the Jets, that are playing tough. Like I said, that Atlanta game was impressive against the Vegas Raiders. That was pretty good. And as for what to watch for in Week 13, this COVID, we're going to talk about COVID a little bit more. But the way it is affecting the schedule, I mean, as we're doing this video right now, the Steelers are playing the Ravens 6 days after they originally were supposed to play. We've got games coming up next Monday. The Bills are playing Monday night. We have another Tuesday game. I mean, COVID has been crazy in regard to affecting the schedule. And you wonder if it is going to have an impact on teams coming down the stretch when their games are getting moved around. They may be playing on shorter rest or whatever. Is this going to have an impact on who makes the playoffs or seeding? It's going to be something to keep an eye on, no doubt about it. So, Robert, your takeaways and what you're looking for in Week 13.
Well, my takeaways, especially after watching the performance against the Seahawks, just how bad the NFC East is, and the real possibility. And I did some homework here on the NFC East. There's a real possibility that 5-11 could win that division. If you look at the Giants and Washington right now are atop the division. Giants have the tiebreaker at 4-7. They do not have easy schedules the rest of the way. The Giants' last 5 games are against the Seahawks, Cardinals, Browns, Ravens, and Cowboys. There's a real possibility they only win one of those games, and that's against the Cowboys in Week 17. Washington's path isn't any better, quite frankly. Their last 5 games are against the Steelers, the Niners that we just talked about, the Seahawks, the Panthers, who have shown some signs of life, and then the Eagles. So, you're talking about an NFC East, a division that, you could see a team with 11 losses win that division this year. And we'll see. We'll see how these teams play down the stretch. The Cowboys have Andy Dalton back. Maybe that gives them enough to win a game or two here to make it competitive. But it's a real possibility that not even, I know a lot of people talk, well, maybe 7-9, 6-10. It could be worse than that, as it turns out. What I'm looking forward to this week, there's some. This was kind of a bad week for for matchups. I'll cut you some slack, Chris. The games weren't easy to pick, but the teams really on the fringe of the playoff hunt, especially in the AFC. Chris, your Dolphins take on the Bengals. They had that loss against the Broncos. This is a game that they should win, just like the Broncos game was. Can they take care of business against the Bengals? Tennessee, Cleveland, that's another one. Cleveland, needs that game to stay, in the playoff picture, within that top 7, top 8. So we'll see what they can do. And then, Washington at Pittsburgh. I'll throw this out there because, Washington's been one of these underachieving teams this year. Pittsburgh, we know what they are, undefeated going into today's game, but they'll be playing this game on short rest. So can Washington take advantage? Maybe Pittsburgh has a slip up. Pittsburgh's a much better team, but again, it's the NFL. We just don't know. So, not a great slate of games this week, but some that will definitely have an impact on the playoff picture heading into the final stretch here.
Justin, your takeaways and what to look for.
I'm going to read you guys a very short list. Okay. A list of quarterbacks: Carson Wentz, Kirk Cousins, Drew Lock. Do you know what all those quarterbacks have in common? Anyone?
No.
They are the only quarterbacks that have 11 or more interceptions this season. Oh, wait, no, I forgot a name. Mr. Tom Brady also has 11 interceptions. What fantastic company for the GOAT. Listen, I'm never going to pass on the opportunity to pour dirt on this guy. You know what I'm tired of? And this happens. It happens every week during the broadcast, during the Buccaneers games, and then the few days after, the Monday, Tuesday, the Monday morning quarterback, where everyone is just looking for an excuse for Tom Brady. Freaking Tony Romo, who I really enjoy listening to, he's saying the whole game against the Chiefs on Sunday, oh, well, they just need more time to figure it out and get on the same page. Oh, Brady didn't have an off season. He's not used to these receivers, blah, 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 blah. It's week 12. Okay. If you haven't figured out your timing and your chemistry by now, it's not happening. It's just not happening. I'm just tired of the excuses for Tom Brady. We have rookie quarterbacks that came into the league with obviously less experience than Tom Brady and also didn't have an offseason. Is Justin Herbert making excuses because he didn't have an offseason? He didn't have time to get used to playing with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams? No, he's lighting it up. He's probably going to be rookie of the year. I don't hear excuses from him. Oh, but Tom Brady, the guy who everyone says is the best quarterback of all time. Well, sorry, the situation isn't quite perfect enough for him. So that's my takeaway is Tom Brady has obviously one of the best resumes of any quarterback of all time. He is also 43 years old, so we need to factor that in when judging his performance. He's not in his physical prime anymore. But I think you're seeing from Tom Brady this year what myself and many others have said year after year after year when everyone just wants to call this guy the best ever without any kind of context, is that football is the ultimate team game, and it doesn't matter if the quarterback does his job to perfection. There are 10 other guys on the field with you that also need to do their job, and there's 11 guys on defense who need to do their job. With the Patriots, Tom Brady had the luxury of the best coach team in football that never made mistakes. They always were in the right position. They didn't give teams free points. They were a greatly coached team because they had one of the best coaches ever. Now you take that supporting cast that he had or the coaching system he had and you knock it down a peg, and now we're seeing what's happening. Tom Brady, sure, his stats look decent, I guess. He's thrown for a lot of yards. He has 28 touchdowns. Okay, but he's not winning games at the clip that we're accustomed to with the Patriots. So maybe this will shed some light on Tom Brady that I've been saying for years, that it takes a village to make a Super Bowl champion. Stop crediting Tom Brady for being the sole reason for the Patriots dynasty. It couldn't be further from the truth. Great quarterback, but he has his limitations. Okay. As far as looking forward, I'll make this quick because of that rant I just went on. I'm really curious to see what Washington does moving forward. I think they're going to win the putrid NFC East. I know they have a couple tough games coming up. I think they play the Steelers next week, maybe. I think they got the 49ers on their schedule. But then they wrap up with 3 winnable games, including one against the Seahawks that I think they'll win. They also play the Eagles again. They got some talent. McLaurin, Gibson, 2 really solid offensive players. They have a really good defensive line, and I think their secondary is okay too. As long as Alex Smith just doesn't totally screw them over, I think they'll end up being the NFC East champs at the end of the day. Obviously, a long way to go.
All right. So our next topic, continuing with the NFL, is with the uptick in COVID-19 cases, should the NFL consider some kind of bubble for the playoffs? Absolutely. Yes. I think they're going to have to. I think after the last couple of weeks, I mean, with the Steelers Ravens game being postponed 3 different times, they're going to have to go into bubbles. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. They're going to have to do something. Now, obviously, we're only talking 14 teams making the postseason, a lot more manageable than if all 32 teams had to do it. So, absolutely, the NFL is going to have to do a bubble for the playoffs. If they're going to have their playoffs on schedule and the Super Bowl when they wanted to. And of course, we've also discussed the possibility of a Week 18 to make up any regular season games that can't be, done when they're originally scheduled. So right now we don't have that as right now, but eventually that could change. But yeah, the NFL is definitely going to have to do a bubble, because if they don't, then most likely, especially because with COVID getting even worse throughout the United States, there's no way they're going to be able to do it. So, Justin, your thoughts on this?
Well, I think saying there's no way they're going to be able to do it is there's no evidence of that, because no matter how many players on each team get COVID test positive, The NFL continues to push through and do the plan that they want to do. So I don't see why that would be any different looking at the postseason. Listen, football is not hockey. It's not basketball. The playing surface needs a lot more care than just throwing a Zamboni out there to resurface the ice. Okay. You can't have bubbles where the same teams, you're having 3 or 4 games on a field in the same day. So I just from that perspective, I don't really think it's feasible. And really, I mean, the teams play once a week. So you're going to have like these teams sitting around all week in the same area. I don't know if I just don't buy that as some great solution. I think the NFL is going to end up just pushing through like they have been, right or wrong. And they're going to continue with this, home field that they've been doing. I don't see there being a bubble.
Oh, Justin, I'll tell you. You look what happened with Denver last week with their quarterbacks. Could you imagine something like that happened in the playoffs where a team?
Yes, I look at what Denver did, which is you had quarterbacks who weren't following the protocols. And
Right.
as we've seen time and time again, when you don't follow protocols, when you don't wear masks around your facility, COVID spreads. So, hey, follow the rules, and that increases your chances of not doing something like that. And I will say this regarding the Broncos, any team that's not quarantining a quarterback is just asking to lose games, because the Broncos didn't. There's been smart teams that have, and you're just asking for trouble. So I don't feel bad for the Broncos. I think that the smart teams that are following the rules have not had COVID outbreaks, or they've been very limited. Just do that, and then everything will be fine. I understand that the cases are rising all over the country, but and this goes for everyone. Wear your mask, follow the rules, and you won't see giant spreads. It's not that difficult, people.
Okay. All right, Robert, your thoughts.
Yeah, I don't think that the solution is a large scale bubble, but I do think that teams, to Ritz's point, first, follow the protocols. I mean, there's clear guidance about what they should be doing, and really that's a good starting point. The Broncos could have avoided avoided that scenario on their own if they had simply followed the protocols. It was wearing a mask. That was really the difference between them having a serviceable quarterback for that game and not. So those are the types of things that teams really need to follow. But I do think that for the playoffs, teams should consider some sort of bubble on their own, where they kind of isolate as a team. Whether you hole up in a hotel, whatever, and that way you can ensure that that these players aren't going off on their own. And during the most important stretch of your season, during a playoff run, and something happens where you lose key players or key positions because they have to go on the COVID list and miss a playoff game. That's a worst case scenario for these teams. So I could see something like that happening. But as Goodell said today, because I think he was asked about this, that basically he doesn't think he basically kind of shot down the idea of a bubble for the playoffs. But he did say what teams do he basically said what teams do on their own, it's up to them. So I could see teams just out of an abundance of caution saying, we're going to create our own bubbles to prevent any sort of scenario in the playoffs where you lose a key player. I mean, just think your Dolphins, Chris, what if they lost, Fitzpatrick and Tua for some reason, and you're going into a playoff game with a third string or fourth string quarterback. I mean, that's a bad situation to be in. So I think teams really need to consider that, as an option, just to avoid, any of these scenarios where if someone happens to not follow the protocols, then you pay a huge price. And, when it comes to the playoffs, I think the NFL, they're not going to want to move these games around, because then it's going to create a huge competitive disadvantage for all teams involved, not just the teams in that particular game.
All right. Our last topic, Sarah Fuller made history at Vanderbilt last week. The women's soccer player, I believe she did a kickoff. Vanderbilt got shut out, so she didn't get a chance to kick any extra points or field goals, I believe. And, it's a great story. Now, Robert in the notes for the video says Jason Whitlock makes an ass out of himself. So I don't pay attention to Jason Whitlock. There's a lot of talking heads out there that I just really ignore because I really don't care for them. I think either they're blowhards, they're just putting out things to get attention, and I am not going to give them attention. So I don't know what Jason Whitlock said about Sarah Fuller, nor do I care what Jason Whitlock said about Sarah Fuller. What I will say about Sarah Fuller myself is that I think it's great she had this opportunity to be the first woman to play in a Power 5 conference college football game. And I hope she gets a chance to kick a field goal or an extra point and score some points. I think it'd be great. I think that certain positions in football, women can definitely handle themselves as good as any guy can. And I think it's great. It's a great story. It's great to see. She's a heck of a women's soccer player. So, obviously she has the ability to kick, and I hope she does something worthy. I think it'd be great to see it. So, all right, Robert, your take on Sarah Fuller.
So the point of Whitlock's column was basically he referred to this as a make-a-wish kick.
Oh,
so not only did he degrade Sarah Fuller, he decides to invoke that. What I want to know about Whitlock is, why isn't he a make-a-wish columnist? This is a guy that's been let go by multiple outlets. His contract wasn't renewed with, I think, Fox or ESPN, and he was cut loose, and he lands with Clay Travis's half-ass clown outfit. And, we're supposed to act like this guy is some, nationally acclaimed columnist when he can't even get a job with any sort of big paper or big news outlet. Get out of here. As for his take, look, I don't get why it's so controversial. Why people think that this was like some sort of media ploy or whatever. The coach was in a tough spot. He had no one else to turn to. All of the kickers, all of them, were on their COVID list. Couldn't use them. So, he turned to the soccer team, and Sarah Fuller was a candidate, and she, had a tryout and everything. It worked out, and she landed a spot on the team. And then, you have all these Twitter critics talking about the squib kick. Oh, is that as far as she can kick it? Look, I played soccer. I've played soccer with goalies that can kick the ball the length of the field. And I've seen them kick a football too with some real power behind it. That was intentional. They said that they wanted to squib kick it. She executed it pretty well. They wanted to keep it away, I think, from the returner. And, that was her job in that moment. She didn't get a chance to kick anything else. So, I don't get the desire of some to urinate on a moment like this when it's Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's not having a good season. She got an opportunity. She had to try out for it. It worked out, and she was the kicker for Vanderbilt last game. Looks like she might be the kicker for Vanderbilt in this upcoming game too. So, the Whitlocks of the world, I get it. You're not too good at your job, so you have to keep bouncing around to other ones and, landing at third-rate outlets to spew your, asinine comments. But, let's not take away a very real moment here from someone who earned her spot.
All right, Justin, you get the last word.
Well, I wanted to make sure I got his statement or what he said in his column right. Jason Whitlock's column is behind a paywall, so I'm going to be paraphrasing here, but I think what I had a big problem with 2 points in his column. One, he said basically Sarah Fuller did this squib kick and she jogged off the field with no attempt to go tackle anyone or whatever. She wasn't part of the game. Okay. Isn't that exactly what every special teams kicker or punter does? I don't see Adam Vinatieri running out there and laying guys out on kick returns. Okay. That's just the nature of the position. So as someone who used to play college football, Mr. Jason Whitlock at Ball State, I think you should know that kickers are not exactly a great representation, whether they're male or female, of football as a sport. They're kickers for a reason. They're not defensive linemen. I think what else I had a problem with is that Jason Whitlock framed his dismissal or this make-a-wish, comment that Robert pointed out. He framed it as if Vanderbilt's doing some kind of disservice to Sarah Fuller because she didn't earn it, in the fashion that he feels people should earn a spot on a college football team. That she was just the lucky recipient of special circumstances because the team ran out of kickers, and that this is, like a PR stunt, which is the ultimate kind of theme of his column. Here's the problem, Jason. That's not for you to say. That's Sarah Fuller's decision on if, she's being disrespected because this is why she need to be on the football team. She's an adult. She made the decision to go out there and kick. Respect her for that. Enjoy the moment. Enjoy that this means a lot to a lot of young girls out there who thought, wow, I didn't think I could ever play football before, but now I know I have a chance. Just respect that. You don't have to be an ass about everything that you write about or that you have an opinion about. I know that that's kind of his shtick. I'm sure he believes a lot of the nonsense he says. But as Robert pointed out, there's a reason he's been at so many different stops, because he makes these clown takes. And I couldn't think of a better place for him to land than Clay Travis's website, which I will not say by name because I think it's a joke. But it's a cool moment. Vanderbilt, not that I'm a big college football fan, Vanderbilt's had a very forgettable year, but they did something positive. So instead of being a jerk, let's commend them, let's clap their hands, and recognize that this was a unique moment. That's all. Just say that. This was unique. Even if you don't want to come right out and praise it and say it's fantastic, whatever. That's your opinion, dude. But at least recognize the significance of it. That's all. That's all you got to say.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's just there's certain people out there in the, I don't want to say sports writing community, but that there are people out there, like, and I'm not going to say any names, but they want attention and they will say outlandish things. And sometimes I think they don't even believe them, to be honest with you. They're just saying things to get attention. They want attention. They want ratings. They want clicks. They want big contracts, and they will go above and beyond to say outlandish, moronic things for the sake of doing it. And again, I am not going to partake in what they want. I'm not going to say any names. I'm not going to say who I like, who I don't like, because well, I should say who I like, but I'm saying who I don't like, because I just think that it's all a game to them, and it makes a mockery of what we do. So, all right, guys, it's been fun.
Just real quick, an important point to note here. I know that Whitlock, among others, said, "Well, why didn't they get a men's soccer player?" Vanderbilt doesn't have a men's program. Vanderbilt has a women's soccer program, and that's why they look to them for a kicker, because again, they couldn't use any of their own, and they were in a tough spot. They needed someone on the roster who could kick, and Sarah Fuller passed the test and made history on Saturday. So to what Rich said, appreciate this moment. This is a history making moment. Sarah Fuller could pave the way for others like her who have the ability and can play at this high level of college football. That's all you need to do. Everything else is just BS.
All right, guys. It's been fun. Folks, thanks for joining us. We always appreciate it, and we'll see you next week.